Okay, so just getting my day started. Did a video already, or did I? Um, it's still early. I'm just now on my second cup. I had a rough night because it's been super hot. We all been sleeping in the same room because here there's no air conditioning. We don't have central air, but we do have a portable air conditioner we've had for years now because up in Seattle, that apartment didn't have air conditioning, so we got it back then, 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, something like that. So anyway, sleeping in one bedroom, which is a pretty decent sized bedroom. It's our downstairs guest bedroom with the cat, the dog, the kids, Noelle, and our sea monkeys, and our hamster. Didn't get a lot of sleep. The first 2 nights, yes, because that bed is super comfortable. But last night, somebody kept bumping the bed, hitting the bed, banging the bed. It just was, couldn't sleep. So now I'm trying to struggle and do work today, and I'm just not, it's not good. But anyhow, you guys don't care about my sleep struggles. Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure you subscribe also to the YouTube channel. Now this is an Ask HershNoeie. And with this, someone said, hey Hersh, I hear you talk about Tacoma quite often. We're moving to the area for a job. That's the typical scenario. However, we're concerned about moving to Tacoma. I have found a few homes that are kind of outside of the area. Seen some in Gig Harbor, seen some in Puyallup. Our concern is about the schools, diversity, as well as quality of life. What are your thoughts? Now, I had someone ask me about Olympia. I've gotten a lot of people ask about Olympia. And one of the things I'm going to tell you, and I've said this before, and I hope people definitely pay attention to it, is if you're looking for diversity, meaning people of different colors, different religions, different everything, these suburbs are not it. Being honest. You're going to move there and be sadly disappointed. They look great. Don't get me wrong, and they're great communities. But if one of your prereqs is diversity, you're not going to find it in the suburbs. You're not necessarily going to find it in Bellevue. Bellevue has a large white population and a large Asian population. Other than that, nope. Not much of anything else. When you talk about Redmond and Issaquah and all these other places, diversity is not their strong suit. They are great communities, great cities. I'm not saying that they're not. But when you're talking about diversity, these other places, and we're talking in significant quantity. We're not talking about, oh, there's a few Hispanic people over there, and I know a black person over there. No. When we're talking about just true numbers where you can, and what people are talking about when they're talking about diversity is not like the occasional black person. They're talking about, comforts. I've had a lot of black women talk about, like, hey, where are some places, like hair salon places and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I know of a few, right? I know of a few here in Tacoma. Or, like, I've really been missing, like, this type of food, like, I know of several. Last night we ate some too. Oh my God. I don't want to talk about it, but man, Uncle Therm's. I'm serious. Go Philly. I'm not saying they're the healthiest thing, but oh my goodness. You want some food from like back home? And some of the black folks know what I'm talking about. Yeah. There's white folks that go there too because the food's just, everybody goes, food's just stupid. Yeah. But you're not going to necessarily find that in these other places. They look great, But diversity is not their strong suit. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if that's what you're looking for, not going to be the case. I know a guy whose wife, I think, was Filipino, and he wanted to move to a particular place, and his wife said no. Because I think her friends or something had lived in Tacoma or whatever, and she's like, I'd rather live in Tacoma. Because I know that there's other Filipinos here in decent numbers, versus some of these other places hit and miss. I've had people from South Korea come and visit, and they like Tacoma because when you go over there between Tacoma and Lakewood, it's mostly like our little Korea. Right? There's diversity here in decent sizes. It's not just heavy in one area in terms of people of color. Everybody's got a decent slice. You can't find that in some of these other suburbs. Not in Renton, not in Olympia, not in Everett, not in Gig Harbor, not in Issaquah or Redmond or Woodinville. You're not going to find it there. And for some people, that's okay. Some people don't mind that. It's whatever. But for other people, it's something that they are. I know white people who want to live in a diverse place. That's why a lot of people are attracted to Tacoma. It's not just because it has a city feel and vibe and all that. It's because they want diversity. I remember early on, there was a lady who was in this buy nothing group. It's where people offer stuff that they no longer have a use for, but it's still in good working order, and they offer it for free, right? It's on Facebook. It's a good thing to join. There's one up in Seattle. There's one down here. They're all over. And she said, I really want my kids to be around diversity. We should set up a kid date because I would like for my kids to be around other kids that don't necessarily look like them so they can learn and be adapted. And so that's kind of the situation. So my response to you is don't fall into the trap of what other people say Tacoma is. I had this discussion with some city leaders the other day. I said, do you all remember not long ago when people used to make fun of Tacoma and be like, ugh, why would you move there? And now no one says that. Now they look at how silly that statement actually is. Because when you come and visit, you realize it's a hell of a city. I'm not saying it just because I live here and I have a deep amount of investment here. I'm not saying that. I speak the truth. There will be people who will say, well, it's a lot of crime. There's not any place here that doesn't have a lot of crime. Even beautiful hoity-toity Bellevue and Redmond and all of these other Mercer Island. Yes, they do have crime. Gig Harbor, they have crime. Maybe not in the same volume, but they do. And as long as you don't stick your nose in places where you shouldn't be and shouldn't be a part of, you typically are okay. Do the one-offs happen? Yes, but they happen everywhere. You're going to get a package stolen just as fast in Gig Harbor, maybe faster than you would probably in Lakewood or Tacoma or wherever. These are facts, right? So don't fall into the trap of, I really want to go to Tacoma because I like kind of what is there, but I'm scared because people have said it's, it's Crip City and, there's bloods everywhere and, people Crip walking and all this other stuff. I'm not saying we don't have gangs, but a lot of these places do. My hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky, back when it was in the 40,000 people range, had gangs. And the police were like, we don't really think they're gangs. Until one of the gang members shot at the cop. And then they're like, yep, we have gangs. They're everywhere. Just is. Do you have some copycats? Sure. But they're everywhere. That shouldn't be a deterrent for you to say, well, I understand certain neighborhoods or whatnot, and that's why I tell folks your safest bet is to move downtown if you can. Then try to vet the other places. You may strike gold and land in a neighborhood without doing much research and you're good. You may, and there's a good chance you might. But there's also this off chance where someone we knew asked about Tacoma. We were telling them about Tacoma, and instead of moving to Tacoma, they moved to Lakewood in an area that's not so good, and they got mad at us. But I told them I don't know much about Lakewood. And I tell people, if there's a city I don't know much about, I'm going to tell you I don't know blah, blah, blah. I don't know much about it. Don't go to a place just because you want to, like what at the time, it still is, was cheaper than Tacoma. And so they were wanting to go to someplace cheap. Cheap doesn't necessarily mean good. And you basically bought what you paid for. You know, you got exactly what you paid for. You can't necessarily do that. I never knew exactly where they went to. I just remember them making comments about it. It sucks. It's horrible here. This is worse than where I came from, and they came from some big city. But yeah, if you end up in the wrong area, yeah, don't go necessarily. And again, they foolishly probably thought that Lakewood is safer than Tacoma, and that's absolutely not true. There was a time when a journalist finally spoke up and got mad at these other journalists, outside journalists, because when there was crime and issues that happened in Lakewood, they would say Tacoma, because people don't know about Lakewood that much, but they know about Tacoma a little bit more. And so a lot of the reporting didn't have anything to do with Tacoma, but it had to do with Lakewood or some of these other places. Right? And so people don't have this perception. Not all of Lakewood is bad, of course not. But there's, just like here, there are spots. Like in Federal Way, there are spots that I wouldn't even consider at all. I've heard enough stories that I'm like, But that doesn't mean all of Federal Way is bad. Same thing with Auburn, Sumner, all these places. There are different issues that crop up that you have to take a back seat on. But if you foolishly avoid Tacoma because of thinking the whole city, some people tell you the whole city is just rough. I remember when the new hotel got completed not long ago, and there was someone who was from Tri-Cities, I believe, which is covered in gangs and got drug issues and everything else. Smaller area, but it's got a big chunk of problems down there. Who said, I don't know why they're putting that right there in downtown. Better make sure you have a whole lot of security because it's extremely rough. And people were like, what are you talking about? The funny thing is, even statistically, downtown is one of the safest. It went from being one of the worst to one of the safest, and even Hilltop is one of the safest places in the city. Now that's not something I'm saying, that's hardcore facts, right? But for an idiot who doesn't do any sort of research, they're going to sit here and go on stuff that happened in 1982, back when I was like 4. Yeah, when I was 4 years old, yeah, it was a completely different place. I'm now 43. And what happened some 39 years ago is not the same as what's going on today. Doesn't even look like the same city. And in fact, that hotel where it is, there's a huge amount of investment. I laugh because it's so ridiculous. It's so laughable. When you come here and see it, it's just laughable to me. And I proved my point with some city leaders just by bringing up how silly some of the comments people have made about Tacoma, and since they live here and they know hardcore facts more than I do by far, you know, out of the conversation of the 4 or 5 people that I was on that conversation with, I knew the least. They know by far more, and they were like, yep. So I proved my point just by proving some of the silly things that people have said, right? So when you're talking about quality of life, you can't really beat it. Now, people will sit here and root for Bellevue, and that's, some people, they live there, and that's great. Bellevue is nice, but it's not, there's this fake facade. And I said this about Seattle, and people didn't believe me. There's this fake facade, right? Sometimes there's fool's gold. So look in between all of the jewels, because some of that, what you're seeing that's shimmering, is not real gold. There is gold, but some of that's fool's gold. And people see the pretty in the glass and the business suits and the pretty people and the pretty women and all that, and the super sports cars that go around, but they don't see what's underneath. There's a lot of other issues that are underneath. Here in Tacoma, it's just gritty. period. And the fact is, the city likes the fact that we're gritty. The citizens like the fact that we're gritty. That's Tacoma. We don't try to be something that we're not. Every institution down here, whether there's a satellite from some other place, a satellite company or a satellite institution from another place, is completely different down here in Tacoma. It is a different city. We go our own way, period. We always had to. Not because we wanted to, we had to. And now we're spanking everybody else. These are facts. If you look at statistics, because people want to point out statistics on the negative side, positive side, spanking everybody. When you look at the park system here versus Seattle, a city that's by far bigger, we spank them all day long. We've been opening up new parks every year, few every year. Can't Seattle say the same? When it comes to the arts program, Tacoma Creates spanks the entire region. I mean, there's been articles written in Seattle saying, like, what's going on? Because, like, what? There's even performers saying, like, you know, instead of being up in Seattle where we thought we would be, we've been doing shows down in Tacoma because they have this large art scene that's opening up. And it's true. That doesn't mean that Tacoma doesn't have a lot of, or Seattle doesn't have a lot of great things. It does. And it has a big arts program and all that. But we literally put our tax money behind it. And it's the biggest in the region. The quality of life in Tacoma is pretty good. I'm not saying it's utopia down here. I'm not saying that. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that can be fixed. There's a lot of regulation that shouldn't be there. I agree. I'm not debating that whatsoever. But the reality is that some of the things that people think they know about the city is not true. And you have some people that want to paint this negative persona. And if you don't do your research, you're going to buy into that and later have regrets. You're going to have buyer's remorse. I've had a few people tell me that. I had a person who bought a house up in Seattle, now has buyer's remorse. Their house has pretty good value, but they're saying, like, they don't like their neighborhood. It's okay. It's an okay neighborhood. But when you look at the traffic, you can't get out of your driveway because there's cars parked everywhere, blocking your way and squeezing through. That gets old, right? Almost getting into, I've seen houses where there's, back in the day, it was cool, but now so much traffic and parking, you almost get into a wreck trying to get out of your house. The crowded effect, because people want the title of living in Seattle, and that to me is just stupid. I'd rather have a good quality of life. One of the other things too, the severe heat. Some of these small towns, all you have are shopping malls, or a shopping mall, some retail, and some houses. So the power grid is not that robust. Here, when the heat did its thing, and I'm still trying to make it through, it's Tuesday, we didn't have a fear of power failure. There's so many industries. Even Seattle had a little bit of an issue. There's some power outages up in there in our old neighborhood, the Greenwood area. Because down here, we are the grit city. We have industry. You don't see a whole lot of industry up in Seattle. You have a whole lot of IT, but down here, all the big factories and all that nasty grit, stinky stuff that people talk about saved our butts because we had to overbuild our power grid. So people that were running their air conditioners and stuff like that, thankfully, thank goodness, we didn't have to worry about the power going out. Grocery stores up there shutting down because their thing can't keep up. We didn't have those issues, thankfully. So research the city more. And it's not that I have some sort of, people have accused me of being the mayor of Tacoma and, a big investor of Tacoma and this, that, and the other back in the day. It's not that. It's that I preach the facts. I'm not saying everything's rosy. I'm not saying everything's wonderful. There are a lot of things that should be improved here, and slowly those are happening. Do we have the best schools in the area? No. We don't. But there are a lot of things that they're doing to try to improve that. There's a lot of things you can do as a parent to also improve that too. We've had to learn that just through online classes. But those are things you can kind of overcome. You can't overcome a zip code. Once you buy a house, you're kind of there. And to get out from under that is really challenging. And so the one lady up in Seattle, I wrote back to her to see like, hey, how's things going? She can't, she can sell her house and it'd be gone in no time. But she said, then what? Then what? Because she wants to move down. They want to move down here now. Because all you see in the news here is just a new building going up. We have more cranes popping up in the sky. Tons of other things that I even know about, that I'm a part of, that I can't talk about yet. They're happening in Tacoma that are great. The picture down here looks good. So far, the layered approach, the slow trudge that leadership has done here is working. So now it's almost impossible to find a house down here. Like it's almost impossible. It's not even a matter of throwing money at it. There are people who come in fully loaded. Like this woman here talks about how she can sell her house for like 800 grand and still walk out with quite a bit of that because of all the equity. But then what do you do? Because there are other people from California that says, hold my beer. That 800,000 is cute. And I guess whenever not to make fun of that, that's a lot of money. But once she, pays off the house with that, and what she's walking away is not going to be 800,000. There are people from California, San Francisco, $2 million house when it's really not worth that, but they sold it for $2 million. Come in full of cash and knock people like that out of the way. It's a slugfest to get a house down here. It's just challenging. So that's what I would say. If diversity is your thing and you want a house that's in an area that's diverse and you want it to be in Tacoma, then choose Tacoma. Don't try to sub it out to some other place and say, well, these other places, what about those? Sometimes realtors will tell you, hey, what about these places? Because that's a place that they know more about. And in Tacoma, there's a whole hell of a lot more competition because you got more realtors down here. But I would not allow them to dictate that. You know what I mean? If this is where you want to be, this is where you should definitely be. You may have to get an apartment and wait it out. The job market down here is just on fire. On fire, literally. And probably up in Seattle too, I don't know. It's been a while since I've kept up with a lot of Seattle stuff. But down in Tacoma, it's on fire. So getting a job ain't hard. And the job pay, while much lower than what you're going to see up in Seattle, is steadily trying to increase. Right? But if you're really wanting to move here, I would get an apartment, if you can, downtown. Because again, if you go out and get an apartment someplace else, and then, you have people crip walking on top of your car, then, hey. Once you find your apartment, then I would take that time to research where you could get a house, what area of the city that you want. Every area is a little different, right? It's different. It's not drastically different like up in Seattle where every neighborhood is kind of a whole new experience. Here there's subtle differences, but they are different. So check and see what area you typically like. Then you can tell a realtor, hey, this is the area that I really like. And they're going to tell you, well, this is how much you're going to end up paying. If it's something on the north, I can tell you this. If you go to the northwest part of the city, you're going to be paying a lot of money. 6th Avenue, Proctor, places like that, you're going to be paying a lot of money. I mean, it is what it is, right? But if that's what you want, you can definitely get that. And then literally find a strategy, work with a good realtor, find a strategy to get a house in that neighborhood or in that area that you're looking for and wait it out. You're better off waiting it out and downsize as much as you can. If you come from a house, which I know what that's like, to come from a house to go to an apartment, it sucks. Because we have a ton of crap, I mean, as you can see. And trying to wedge all that into an apartment, it's like, dang. I mean, just wedging it in a U-Haul truck sucked. But trying to downsize to do that, it sucks. But I'm telling you, that's going to be a better strategy long term, because then you can stay in an apartment and do that. Do your year, work hard as you can to try to find a house with a realtor. And then at that point, keep trying to do it. You're going to strike out more times than you're going to be lucky. You may think everything's good because you put in an offer and they're looking at it, but they're waiting for the best deal for them. And it may not always be the highest. I'm offering you $30,000 more than what you're looking for, $80,000 more. Some people have even been using cryptocurrency and cash. They're becoming creative. You see what I'm saying? Some people have even written stories about why it's important for them to have this house, what inspired them to buy this, like stuff that I never even thought of. There are people now who, they find a house that they want. I'm looking at one right now. This is part of my job, to review houses. And they look at this house and say, I love the house. I love what it looks like. Let's say, I don't know how much it tells me, but I'm not going to tell you guys the exact price of this house. But let's say that this house was $800,000. I love this house is $800,000. I'm going to give you $850,000. Plus, I'm going to give you 3 Bitcoins. That's a lot. I'm going to give you a Bitcoin, which is still a lot. And I'm going to write you the story about why I want this house so much and why I'm willing to, even give you my Bitcoin, because this is a house I can see my family growing up in, and it looks like from when I was growing up, like the street reminds me of my childhood, and so this house fits perfectly, and I love the neighborhood and the trees, and there's people who do that, and they end up winning the bid. Maybe someone else offered a little bit more, or maybe offered cash, but your story is what got you over the hump. Maybe the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency, if you have it, got you over the hump. That's what some people have to do. If you don't have cryptocurrency, cool. But I would also offer a story, because that may sound very silly, but for some people, that may actually win the day. But if you want to move here, don't sacrifice that and move someplace else and buy a house, because then you're going to be stuck, potentially. You see what I'm saying? And then you're going to have to you're not going to have the equity really to try to get something else. It's a step that you'll need to. I would visit Tacoma. I've told people this, visit Tacoma, because when you visit, it's like, dang, man, the city is way different than when I got here 4 years ago. I used to live up in Seattle 7 years ago when we first moved here in the state, and we would come down to Tacoma all the time and loved it. You see, the problem is people come and they see downtown, they see that little section, and they're like, cool, and then they go back. But no, venture throughout the city. See what it's about. See some of the things. Look at the art. If you want to know about art, the city has a ton of it everywhere. In hidden areas, hidden cavities, you'll see all types of art, some interactive, here in the city. So venture through, check out the parks. Look at what they've actually been doing here. Look at the waterway, what we've been doing, right? So I would go through and go through the community, link up with the farmers market. Come to the farmers market on Thursday. Downtown Tacoma has the Broadway farmers market. Come see what that's like. Get a vibe and a taste for the city, right? So if you're visiting, check that out. Some people come, they visit, and they spend a couple of hours in Tacoma, and then they spend all their time up in Seattle. And the reality is if that's not where you're going to live, you're wasting your time. If you're wanting to afford, if your affordability is only Tacoma, I wouldn't even worry about Seattle. It's always going to be there. Spend your time down here. Find where the hospitals are. Find a neighborhood that's, that's unique and tour around it. Spend some time in the city. I wouldn't even worry about visiting Seattle, because once you live here, you can go to Seattle every day. But you're not going to get the opportunity necessarily to find the right fit for you in Tacoma, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to look outside of that, and it's not going to be as rosy as you think. Some people want to look at Olympia. Olympia has its own social issues. I'm not going to go into that. They have their own issues too that people complain about. And people are saying, why can't they do something better? It's a smaller city. It's much more rural than, say, Tacoma. But it has its own issues. It has a lot of great things about it. It has its own issues. Traffic. Getting into Tacoma in any direction sucks. It does. When we go to the studio, I go over the interstate and I just look, and it's just a parking lot in both directions. It sucks. So you have to deal with that every day, as opposed to living in the city, working in the city. It takes me 15 minutes to get to, I have a few jobs, but to get to the studio or get to my other job downtown, doesn't take me any time whatsoever. 15 minutes, if that, right? It's 3 miles in any direction. I live 3 miles from downtown, 3 miles from Spanaway, 3 miles, any direction. Right? 3 miles from the mall, any direction I can go to, and I'm basically there. So I would say, and this is a long HershNoeie, but I've had a lot of people make a lot of mistakes, unfortunately, because they've listened to someone else, or they have this fear about the city based on things that they read, an old article. And I would say, or they've watched someone that does the top worst places to live, and they really believe that stuff. And if you follow that without really doing the research, it's not going to be good. So do your research, come visit, spend some time, live like the locals do. That you will learn. You'll understand that people here are a lot more friendlier than some other places. You'll have people sit and talk to you. I've been out and people have come up and say, "Hey, Hirsch," and I'm like, "Who's this?" I don't even know who this is. Sitting there holding conversations, giving me daps and all this other stuff. And the people that don't know me because of this channel, still, it's like people have conversations. Just the other day, I was, letting the windows down in the car. An older guy. Asian guy. He was probably an Asian man, because he was 70s or 80s at least. Walking by, he was like, "Hello, how are you doing today?" I said, "Oh, it's hot. Doing pretty good. How are you?" He's like, "Oh, I'm doing all right," and kept on going. Never happened up in Seattle ever. Never. I've had a woman pushing a baby. I talk about this. Digging in my car one day. "Hey, good morning." And I look around, I'm like, "What? Good morning." People just go out of their way to talk to you, whereas up in Seattle, they go out of their way not to even make eye contact. So those types of things matter, right? Diversity matters for some people. The fact that you can't find the things that are comfort for you, that matters. It wears on you for a while, after a while. Looking around and you see nobody that kind of looks like you or kind of has the same whatever, it wears on some people for a while. Some people, it doesn't matter, right? So instead of going through all of that, go to a place that can feel like home to you or feel like a comfort to you. Do your research, and then once you've spent some time here, find a realtor, try to fight the whole housing situation, and then get your house. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's very long. It's a tangent. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Join the Discord. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.